All right. Hey, Craig, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you start us off and tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us, obviously, your name, the organization that you work with, and what your position is at that organization.
Would love to, Hope, and I'm really excited to be on this interview with you and to talk over the topic of youth sports. So my name is Craig Nickel. I live in Waterloo, Ontario, which is about an hour west of Toronto, and I proudly represent PGC basketball. We used to be known as Point Guard College Basketball, but about 10 years ago we made a branding decision to become PGC basketball, and I work in the basketball development side of the business. We have the regular business functions of marketing and finance and human resources, but I work on the basketball development side of things, which means primarily we work with curriculum development, curriculum review, and then also the directors. The directors are the people who run our camps, and we recruit them, we select them, we train them, we schedule them, we evaluate them. So it's a I think I get to work in the fun part of the business.
So tell us a little bit about PGC. What is it? What do you do? And what kind of services do you provide?
Yes, we are a basketball organization first and foremost, and we have two separate sides of the business. Really, we have the bulk of our business currently is serving athletes through camps, and we run a variety of different camps in the summer, from fourth grade right through to college players. And then we do offer some fall camps that are focused on shooting, and those are weekend camps. So that's, I'd say, about 90% of our business is on the serving athlete side. And we do have another side of the business called PGC coaching, where we try to serve our coaches, because we realize that when we can impact positively a coach, we really impact dozens of athletes and sometimes even hundreds of athletes. So we are actively seeking to grow that end of our business on the PGC coaching side.
Yeah. So how many camps do you run a year? Give us an idea of kind of the size of your organization.
Yeah, so this summer of 2025, we are running about 155 camps, and as I said earlier, those at the youngest age would be starting in fourth grade and running through to college players. And we have five different course offerings in the summer, so athletes can progress through the different stages of the camp. And we are very confident that if an athlete goes through that entire progression of camps, we call it a curriculum, they will have a very complete basketball education. And that also allows us to, if an athlete comes as a fourth and fifth grader, we can paint a pathway for them all the way through their college career, to stay involved with PGC. And then in the fall, we offer a shooting camp, because obviously shooting is the one thing that every basketball player should be better at, can be better at. And so we offer about 50 weekend shooting camps. And these camps are situated throughout all of the United States. And we have a small offering up in Canada here. I think this summer we have about 10 camps up in Canada, which means about 145 camps in the US.
Wow. Wow. That's a really large scale. And I'm guessing that that's not all at one place. So where do you go? Where do these camps happen?
Um, our overnight camps, we sort of, when I said we have five different camps, they're broken into sort of two categories. We have the bulk of our camps are overnight camps, and those are situated on college campuses where we can access the gyms, the classrooms, the dorms, the cafeterias. However, our leader and president, Manawatsa, a few years ago made a really strategic decision to offer some day camps, because there are certain centers that just aren't big enough necessarily to have a college campus where we can get onto. So we do offer some day camps, and those typically are for the younger athletes a little bit, and those run on a 9 to 5 basis. And now all we really need access to is a gym and a classroom, because we don't have to worry about dorms or cafeterias or anything like that. So that is, of our 155 camps, there's about 100 of them are overnight, and the other 50, 55 are day camps.
So you said 145 camps in the US, right?
Mhm.
And so are you on the West Coast, East Coast, South, North? Where are you at?
We literally we haven't yet crested that mountain of being in all 48 continental states. I think we are in 41 or
Yeah.
42 of them this summer. And we do definitely have pockets of where our brand is stronger. Like Texas is a very strong area for us. Colorado's another strong area for us. Illinois. So we definitely have pockets throughout the country, and then we have pockets where we would love to develop more of a presence. And just as an example, like Kentucky's obviously a real hotbed of basketball, but we haven't found traction yet in Kentucky. So we're always looking to try to build our presence. And then in Canada, we have camps this summer in two of our provinces, in Ontario and Alberta.
Okay.
But we would love to grow it in Canada if we could too.
Yeah. And how many students do you expect to serve this summer coming up?
Yeah, we're heading for a record-breaking summer here in 2025. We think that we're going to have close to 18,000
Wow.
athletes at our summer camps, and then if you add in our fall camps, we would love to get to the 20,000 the
Wow.
20,000 mark this year.
Wow. So that takes a lot of staff. How many staff do you think you have between the higher level staff that is full time, but then I assume that some of them are more of a part time basis during the summer and a seasonal staff. So how many do you expect to have?
It's a great question in terms of the breakdown, because you're 100% right, Hope. We have a core year-round staff, and then we supplement it in the summer. I would say ballparkish, we have 40 to 45 full-time staff who work year-round in
Mhm.
PGC. And then the rest of that is supplemented by our seasonal employees. But one of the things that really makes PGC unique is we have always been a virtual organization. That we have never had a headquarters in the traditional sense, and Mono was, I guess, way ahead of the curve in terms of that. And what part of, I think, the genius of it is it's allowed Mono to build an outstanding team, because he doesn't have to convince people to relocate their families from Boston down to Phoenix or wherever it was. And the challenge has always been, and I'm sure we'll get into this later in our discussion, is how do you build that culture in a virtual world. But he has managed to build an incredibly positive, inclusive, cohesive culture virtually. And literally the only time we as a whole group get together is he takes us away on a 4-day retreat in late August, um, where we get together as a whole company, and that is literally the only time that I get to see a whole bunch, like see in person, the a whole bunch of other people that I work with.
That's well, that's really special that you get to still have that. And you're right, he was way ahead of the curve. I think of course the pandemic pushed a lot of people into virtual. But how long has PGC been incorporated? How long have you guys been doing business?
Yeah, it's actually the history of PGC traces back to our founder, and his name was Dick DeVenzio. And Dick was an outstanding basketball player at Duke University. He was an All-American and an academic All-American there. And he had a very unique way of thinking about the game. And he started running some camps in North Carolina. And Mono Watsa had the privilege of attending that going into his senior year of high school. And Mono will tell anyone that he meets that his life, the trajectory of his life changed when he attended this camp. And when Dick died way prematurely of cancer, Mono was hoping to sort of continue that legacy by taking it over. But Dick's family, offered that opportunity to a lady named Dina Evans, who was an All-American at Virginia and a tremendous, incredible lady.
Mm.
And she continued to run PGC in the United States, and Mono got permission to run Point Guard Academy, kind of a parallel organization up in Canada. So there was these parallel operations happening. And then when Dina no longer had the interest to continue to run it, Mono entered into an agreement to purchase the company from Dina. So Mono's been in charge, like PGC, to answer your question, goes back about 30 years, over 30 years from when Dick started it. And it's been under Mono's leadership for the last 15 years.
Wow.
And And under Mono's leadership, it's experienced tremendous growth. I think, or approximately when Mono took it over, it might have been 10 or 12 camps a summer. And as I said earlier, we're up to 155 camps.
Wow, that's a huge growth in 15 years. I mean, that's a lot of growth. That's great.
Yes.
All right, so now we know a little bit about PGC. I want to know a little bit more about you. And
Okay.
students that are listening to this, they're probably wondering, how did you get from graduating college, doing what you're doing there, to your position now? So can you tell us like the trajectory of your career?
Yeah, and man, I can just see myself sitting in your classes because I did an undergrad in business administration. I didn't have the opportunity to do sports administration, but I was a business administration guy, and I gravitated towards the number side of things. So I did most of my undergrad in finance, and then I ran off to MBA school to get my MBA in finance. And I'll be very honest, I had visions that I was going to be more like a mergers and acquisitions kind of guy. I was maybe going to throw a law degree into it. And along the way, I had amazing co-op jobs where I was getting to do what I thought I really wanted to do, which was move around a lot of money. And at the end of my work terms, I was like, I just had no internal like sense of well-being. Like I just didn't feel satisfied. And when you talk about your career being a compilation of all your experiences, all of my summers as a high school student had been working with young people. I ran drop-in centers, I ran summer camps, and I had felt so fulfilled doing that kind of work. So I even got to the point where in my MBA, I stopped. I just didn't want to talk to my friends because I knew I was not going to go the same path as I thought I had been on. And so I trundled off to Teachers College up here in Ontario, got qualified as a teacher because frankly, that's what would allow me to coach. And I wanted to coach. And so I became a high school teacher and coach. And as I was saying to you earlier, Hope, up here in Canada, we do things a little bit differently, and we do girls high school basketball in the fall and boys high school basketball in the winter. And so I never even had to make a choice between coaching girls and boys. I just did both. I'd start in August, finish in March, and obviously was lucky to meet a wonderful woman who would buy into that kind of vision for our partnership. And I was really blessed to coach a tremendous number of very talented athletes. And when you have talented athletes, you win games, and you get accolades, and eventually moved to the college level to be the head coach of a women's basketball team up here in Canada. And along the way there, I did get involved in PGC, but on a very small basis. Mono had asked me to come on board to be a director, to be one of the people who ran the camps. I was initially extremely skeptical. I was too busy, thought I had too much of my own stuff going on. But Mono finally was able to convince me to attend a camp. And I said, I'll just come for a day. And I remember calling my wife and saying, no, I'm staying for the rest of the week. Like, it was so transformational, and it hit me at a time of life where I was looking to grow, and I felt like I had done all the clinics, I had done all these other things, and so it really came at a great time. I became the just really the Canadian director, to be honest with you. I ran our sessions up in Canada, and I occasionally would dip down into the Northeast to run a session or two. But and then in 2020, Mono asked me to take over the role of director of basketball development and be in charge of the entire team of directors in our curriculum. And that again happened at the right time, and I jumped into that. And so yeah, that's kind of, I know it's a long answer to a short question, but that's the trajectory of how I've ended up here.
So how long have you been working in the sport industry?
I would say, like, I think you got to count back to being a high school coach, and I hesitate to say this, but my first year of coaching was in 1990. So I guess I've been at it for 35 years.
Wow, so you've had a long record of success in the sport industry. So you're the perfect person to ask about all of the business aspects of
And
youth
I've
sport.
seen a lot of changes in that landscape in that longer career. Yes.
I can only imagine. So, Craig, I want to hear a little bit more about the uniqueness of working in youth sport. So, how does working in youth sport, how is it set apart from the other areas of working in the sport industry, especially because you guys are so seasonal with your camps? What are the differences between those two different aspects?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Hope, because once I moved from being involved with PGC just as a director and running my camps and then moving into a leadership role, it really struck me what a unique structure our business has to have, because we generate 90+% of our revenue in 12 weeks of the whole year. And to be honest with you, even the first couple of weeks of the 12 and the last couple of weeks of the 12, we can only be in the parts of the country where school is out. So really, our summer is even more like a 6 week summer,
Hmm.
or 7 week summer when you really boil it down. So it is a unique structure that we've had to build to have all of our resources available in a very, very focused period of time. And I think it's a set of challenges that Mono has navigated really, really well. And because it's not like we can average it out over the course of 40 weeks or 50 weeks. No, everything's got to be ready to go in that time. And I think that the recruitment part has been really important. That as I said earlier, with the virtual organization, Mono has been able to recruit what I consider to be some really world-class people in many, many parts of our business. And I think there has been some real intentional emphasis put on relationship building, because when you only have someone who works for you for, let's say, 12 weeks of the year, there is a very, 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 very high risk, I would say, in most companies, that those people never come back. Like, they do their 12 weeks and are gone. And we definitely do lose some of those employees from year to year, but an incredible number of them come back, in order to be, I think, to continue being in relationship with people, but also to just be associated with a brand that they align with, that speaks to what they think the basketball world should be about.
Yeah, that's a great point. And let's jump into some of those questions about since we've kind of opened the door there, uh, managing so many different um, uh, employees. And do you guys have any volunteers, or is that all staff?
We no longer employ volunteers. At one point we did,
Mhm.
but it was getting too hard to make sure that they were in maintaining our culture, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we enter into, probably for a part-time employee, one of the most ambitious training programs that they would ever think that, oh, if I'm working at a camp, what do I need a training program for? But we want every one of our camps to feel really, really special and tight. And we want it to feel different than any other camp they've attended. So the only way we can ensure that is that every single one of the people who are working there share a vision of what PGC is about.
Yeah. So how do you do that? How do you manage those relationships, especially when they're in so many different locations? There, many of them won't even work with each other. They'll work at different camps. How do you manage that culture? How do you train them well? How do you make sure they're kind of within the culture that you want to set for PGC?
Yeah, there's so many good layers there. One is that, as I mentioned earlier, because we are a virtual company right from the beginning, we do have, I think, very robust training ideas, and we know how to roll out training to people. So even if someone is going to be working for us just for one camp in the entire summer, they have to go through an onboarding process. And I would say it's probably at least a 5 hour onboarding process to work for one camp. And that, even before that point, they've had to go through multiple interviews where, again, the culture is being communicated in many different ways to them. So I think sort of the recruiting selection part and the training part definitely helps. And I think another part that we have made some really good progress in, and but probably continue to need to make more progress in, is the relationship maintenance, or
Mm.
because
Mhm.
at our camps, we have a director who runs the entire camp. And in many cases, they are seasonal employees as well. Many of them are successful high school coaches or college coaches. But then the staff that they're managing, we call them basket instructors. They are all seasonal, like 100% seasonal. And we really want those our basket instructors, our counselors to feel valued. And so we do rely on our directors to try to maintain contact with them throughout the year. Like, hey, because a lot of those people who are our basket instructors are college athletes themselves. So, hey, how's your season going? I saw you guys had a big win over someone, and just sort of maintaining those relationships so that it doesn't feel like the only time I matter is that's that week that I'm working. Like, I actually matter throughout the year. So as I said, we've made progress in that area. We have more work to do.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that there's a lot of challenges with just the vast space between the different people that work with you. So if we would, just so I understand, if we would create an organizational chart of you and your directors and your what'd you say, basket leaders?
Basket instructors. Yeah, basket
Basket
instructors.
instructors. What would it look like? Would you be at the top, and then on the next line would be all of your directors, and then under them would be the basket instructors? Is that how it would work?
So we have a total of 5 of us who work within, like, full time within basketball development. And again, we have a guy who lives in Georgia, a guy who lives in California, Colorado. Like, we're spread out around the country, and we have a number of other directors who do seasonal work for us, who help with recruitment. And so even our basketball development team is it's quite diverse in terms of its structure. And then we get to our directors who actually run the camps. And we have this summer, we have about 53 directors, I think, who will be leading sessions. And some of them lead 1 or 2 sessions in the summer because they're maybe a high school coach who has their own teams to manage throughout the summer. And we have others who are at different stages of their career and are going, I am so fired up about PGC. If I can lead 8 sessions this summer, please let me lead eight sessions. And we, like, the compensation has to reflect the kind of load that we put on those directors. Those directors, we expect to teach everything at the session. They lead every classroom session. They lead every film session. They lead every court session. And the load on them, we expect them, we pull no punches on it. We expect them to be world-class teachers in the classroom. We expect them to be world-class coaches of basketball on the court. Our expectations for them are very, very high. And that's why we have so many successful high school coaches and college coaches who see this as a way to do 2 things. One is to supplement their income from whatever they're making as a coach, and also keep fresh with the game and keep current and have a network of other people. Like, if I'm an aspiring high school coach and I know I can be on calls with guys who are Division II head coaches and Division III head coaches, and I would absolutely want those opportunities. So that's how. And then we have our directors who, as I said, mostly coaches of different levels, and then we hire our basket instructors who are mostly college players. Sometimes they are high school coaches as well, who are just wanting to stay current in the game. And that's how we're structured.
Yeah. So they are. It sounds like it can be pretty demanding because you're traveling a
Yes,
lot.
traveling. Yep.
So how do you? What strategies have you kind of put into place to mitigate the demands on your employees, your directors, your basket instructors, especially given their level of travel? You said it's pretty demanding camps, pretty demanding position, the load that you put on them. How do you help them to mitigate the effect on work-life balance, and how to help them how to balance it all?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And we do find that there is, like many things in life, there's a cycle to it,
Yes.
right? And sometimes the 26-year-old who hasn't found a partner in life yet and just wants to throw his or herself into basketball, they become like the people who say, I want to do
Mhm.
8, 10 courses in the summer, fill me up. Like I just, and to them, honestly, hope travel's an appeal to them, right? Like they don't feel at all like, okay, you're expecting to be in Ogden, Utah here, and then over in, in Springfield, Massachusetts. They go, please, I'd love to make that trip. And so we have those people at that phase of their life. But then as if they do start to have a family, one of the things that a lot of our directors have found who have families is that yes, it does take them away a bit more in the summer, but then during the school year, they can be very, very present. Like
Mhm.
they've made their extra income. And so some of them take great pride in, hey, I haven't missed one of my son's basketball games ever because I'm always able to be at their games. Yes, I'm a little bit more gone in the summer.
Mhm.
So it really, it's a case of sort of catering to what their needs are. So we begin the scheduling process with our directors. We begin it in late October, early November. And
Okay.
and that's hard because we're saying, okay, hey, tell us what weeks you want to be available in summer of 2025, and it's late October 2024, and we're
Mhm.
asking for an idea because we want people to be at our sessions with a sense of joy. Like, kind of like, not that, oh man, hey, I'm sorry, buddy. I know you don't want to be here, but you got to do this. That is a recipe for disaster. We want them to go, hey, no, I get a customized schedule. I told Craig or Dave that I want to do 4 weeks this summer. I gave him five weeks to give me 4 sessions, and hopefully we can accommodate that. So it is really important to us that we try to support that balance with our directors.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have a good mix of directors that are maybe in different life cycles. Some of
Very
them
much
that
so.
are older and maybe a little bit more established in their personal life. Others are just starting out and they can give a little bit more. How do you balance those two? That's a very two different types of directors and lifestyle cycles and styles. Um, how do you balance that while also trying to retain directors year after year? Because you don't, the more you retain, the less you have to train, right? So,
Correct.
what's your process of trying to retain them, especially if they're maybe changing their life cycle from having a very open schedule to maybe they're starting to settle down and want less camps from year to year?
Right. And that there is a sort of a trade-off there for sure, in the sense that by recruiting great people and then putting them into seasonal employment,
Mhm.
we get a great look at them in terms of, are they potential full-time employees for us?
Yeah.
And many of them would aspire to that. Like many of them are always asking, is there any way I can do this full time? And the answer is almost always has to be no. But as we continue to grow, we are creating more opportunities. And in fact, if Mono had a magic wand, he would love to be able to offer full-time employment to almost everybody we have, right?
Mhm.
But we need growth in order to do that, and so we continue to chip away at that. And I really think a lot of that retention piece comes back to relationship building,
Mm.
and it's one of the things that I've been very intentional about, and other people on our basketball development team have been, that we want to be in contact with you throughout the year. It is not just like, oh, here in September, in October, send us your schedule that you want for next year. Like we do evaluations on them. Like we see them throughout the summer. We visit their sessions so they can feel supported. They see us during the training phase in the spring. In September and October, we evaluate. Like we say, hey, let's talk about what went well this summer and what were your challenges. And we've really worked at, knowing where they are in their season, if they're a coach, or if someone's moving, hey, how's the move going? And it we've really tried to move from being purely transactional, like what can you do for me as as a director, and into more of a true relationship where we know what's going. And it's challenging, like with when you have 53 directors, but that's why we have multiple of us on the basketball development team, so that load is not being carried just by one person.
Mhm. It's interesting that you talk about relationship building because with the students that I work with and I teach, I always tell them it's not just about what you know, it's more about who you know and who likes you, right?
Yes. Yes.
So,
And that times, like that at the times when you do have to kind of lean on that person, if you've built a relationship with them, it's so much easier, right? Like coming up to 2 summers ago, I had one of my directors from Michigan who was cleaning an eaves trough and reached out too far and fell off the ladder and
oh,
smashed his elbow, and literally, like, he was supposed to be going to a session in I think it was 2 days. He had a session starting, and it was like, okay, we're in full scramble mode. And
yeah.
if you have created those positive relationships with people, it's I actually didn't even struggle to fill it. I was able to say, hey, like, you know any chance you can help us out, and we were able to patch it up. But yeah, at the core of that is it feeling like a positive relationship.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about the students that might be watching this or reading the textbook, and they may not have had the experience yet of building those professional relationships. So what advice would you give them? What does it look like to build a relationship on a professional level, so that when something like that happens, they could at least be considered, and or maybe the B, the B
Yeah.
part of that question is, um, if they're thinking, man, I love PGC, I would love to work with them while I'm in school. What kind of advice do you give to these students to build that relationship with you?
Yeah, those are two important questions. So if I don't get back to answering part B, make sure you bring me back to it, okay?
Okay.
Um, I think that at the core of building successful professional relationships, and I would even say maybe this extends to personal relationships, is having a deep personal desire to understand the other person, like to actually want to get to know them. Because I think as humans,
Yeah.
we have that sense of, is this person actually genuinely interested in me, or are they checking boxes on
Yeah.
things? And our best people who are in terms of like managing those relationships and building they genuinely want to know what's going on in that life. And so the byproduct of that is they do more listening than talking. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, oh, let me tell you about myself, blah 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 blah. It's like they want to find out. And I think it just takes a certain amount of time. You got to have the basic desire to do it, but you also have to be willing to invest some time and not make every call that you're on with that person just about, like, hey, okay, here's the new curriculum. I want to go over this with you, or here's your evaluation. Let's go over this. It's like spending 10 or 15 minutes to, hey, I know you guys, your daughter you said she was starting kindergarten a couple weeks ago. Like,
Mhm.
how's that been going? I'm sure that was tough. And just having some empathy for the different stages of life
Yeah.
uh, that they're in.
Yeah. So thinking about students and students that have never built those relationships before, they don't have them yet. What could they do if they want to kind of jump into PGC? What are kind of some really tangible tools that they could use to get connected in the industry?
Well, one that I would offer, not only on behalf of PGC, but I would say any organization they're wanting to get involved in, is do a bit of research.
Mm.
Like, when we go to interview you, as if someone's applying to PGC and they don't have an idea what SHAPE is, and SHAPE is an acronym we have that stands for Spirit, Communication, Hustle, Approach, Precision, and Enhancement. Like, it's all over our website, SHAPE, 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 SHAPE. And if you come into an interview process with us and we throw a shape at you, and how do you feel you live out the elements of shape, and they kind of look at you with a blank stare, you're kind of going like, how much research have you done? How much do you want this?
Mm.
So I think that, like, number one is do some research. And so PGC is well enough known in the basketball world that even if you don't have a direct pipeline into PGC, you probably, if you're a basketball person, you probably have someone you know who can tell you a little bit more about PGC. So use that network. So, for example, if I was let's say a freshman at a college who has just finished my first season, and we typically only hire like college students and above. Like occasionally we'll hire someone like a graduating senior before they go to college, but typically where it's freshmen and above. Like I'd be reaching out to my college coach or assistant coaches or my director of basketball operation if we're lucky, and say, hey, I'm thinking of working for PGC this summer. Do you know anybody there? Could you point me in the right direction? And chances are they're no more than two steps removed from someone who will say, hey, I know somebody at PGC.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is connect, connect, connect.
Definitely.
Find someone that knows somebody.
Yep.
Not necessarily go straight and find your email and go straight to you, but really find that relationship.
Yes, and we like to we're awfully proud of PGC, right? Like we think it's an incredible brand and an incredible experience, but we also acknowledge it may not be for everybody, right? Like we're an all-in kind of experience. And if you're someone who wants to dabble in basketball, and kind of skate by and not put a lot in, then we're not going to be a good fit. And so I think getting yourself exposed to people who, as you say, connected to people who can say, hey, oh yeah, like it's an amazing experience, but man, at the end of 5 days, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
That I think having that kind of frame of reference as you come into an interview or apply for a job, I think that's critical.
Yeah, that's great feedback. That's really great feedback. So kind of along those same lines, what's some of the most important things, kind of thinking back to running a seasonal business, especially in youth sport? What are some of the important things students should know about the challenges of running a seasonal youth sport business?
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest challenges is our camp, part of the business that I run is a very, very what we call forward facing or customer facing side of the business. And it's by far what we're known for. It's and the entire organization supports that. But it's so important that then the other functions that are behind the scenes understand our mission and align with our mission. So, for example, our marketing people who do an incredible job, they do have to have a fairly deep understanding of what the product we're offering is so that they don't oversell it. Like I don't want our marketing people, guaranteeing that your kid's going to get a scholarship because if you come to PGC, which might be an easy claim to make, but would be false, right? So we have to make sure. Similarly with our human resources people, they're dealing with hundreds of seasonal employees each year, and we want to make sure that they're communicating with them in a way that like feels on brand for PGC and keeps the standards high. And so every one of our functions behind the scenes have to align with what we're putting out into the public sphere. And that we have senior leadership meetings every 2 weeks to try where the heads of each department meet with Mono, and we also have an incredible our chief operating officer is a wonderful lady named Margie Williamson in down in Waco, Texas. And she was a college coach herself before she went and did her PhD, and her ability to multitask and keep us all kind of rowing in the same direction is unbelievable.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned earlier you have 45 full-time staff.
Mhm.
And what does that look like? What are on the back end? You mentioned you had a marketing team. You obviously have HR. You have the basketball. Sorry, what did you call them? The coaches,
Yeah, so we
directors,
so
camp
we
directors.
camp directors, yeah. So we have like a group of us, about 5 or 6 of us work in basketball development.
Okay.
We have a marketing team, we have a human resources team, we have what we call our scheduling and events team, but that is, I would say, for the sake of our students, think of facilities,
Yeah,
like,
in
because
operations.
that is actually one of our biggest constraints to growth is
Yeah.
finding appropriate facilities in the spots where we want to run. So we have an entire group of an entire team who literally spends their year scouring where, okay, marketing people say we'd like to do another session in Kentucky. Where in Kentucky can we find a facility that meets our group? And then another really important function that I'm sure will make sense, but it's so easy to overlook is what we call our playmakers, or but I think more normally they'd be called customer relations. Um, and these are the people, and there are as a mixture of seasonal employees in that, but also full-time employees who deal with all the questions that come from customers. Like, I'm on the website, I'm trying to register, and my payment won't go through, or my son is, he's supposed to be a ninth grader, but he's a really, really exceptional eighth grader. Can we get him into that camp? And like, and they I forget the number of phone calls our playmakers deal with in a day is stunning. And then they have their email traffic. And so yeah, those are the major functions within our company.
Yeah, I think it's easy for maybe students or people on the outside to look at PGC or an organization like PGC and just kind of say, yeah, they run basketball camps, but to
Yeah.
remember that there's so much behind the scenes that's happening at the business level and running the different elements of the business, such as HR and customer relations or playmakers, as you guys refer to them,
Well,
and
and
operations and facilities and all of those important functions that you yourself are not going to do. Uh,
for
but
sure.
there's a whole team that you have to manage, or Mono has to manage in taking care of all those details.
Yeah, and Hope, one of the real challenges that I wasn't aware of until I, stepped into a leadership role was the challenge of working in 42 or 43 different states.
Yes.
Each state has its like there are states where each of our employees has to do a first aid course. They're not allowed to run, and other state, like all the different collection of payroll taxes across all the
Mhm.
different states. And at first I was like, whatever, like just take off the payroll taxes, like, but no, it's completely some states have zero and other states have really high percentages. So it is a very, very complex task,
Yeah.
much more complex than what I ever thought it was, of just rolling out the basketballs and saying blow a whistle and let's go.
Right. Right. So in some ways, the coaches get, kind of shielded from all of that side. But there is a lot of business operations that happens on the back end that students do need to be aware of. And those of us that aren't going to be coaches, they can still participate in sport in those areas with their unique talents and gifts.
And you know what? I love how you're framing that, because obviously there's a pull from basketball people to work within PGC basketball, and that's a natural fertile recruiting ground for us. But in some cases, some of our best employees on the behind the scenes are not basketball people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of a lady from New Jersey. Her background is football. And she's a mom, like she's a mom and a grandma. Like she
Mm-hmm.
like before she came to PGC, I don't know if she knew what a two-pointer versus a three-pointer was. But she has been unbelievable. And I can think of multiple people in our company who are able to thrive in it despite not really being basketball people in the sense that our coaches are.
Yeah. So that brings me to another one of my questions about the stakeholders. There are so many stakeholders in all aspects of sport. Of course, parents, especially in youth sports, we have parents are an important part of the experience. Of course, the
Yep.
athletes, coaches, directors of the camps in your situation. We have, in some cases, we have sponsors, the facility owners. There are
Yep.
just so many stakeholders in sports that have some sort of buy-in into the organization or into the sport experience. What are some strategies that you have used in your past or in PGC to navigate the differing needs and wants from each of these stakeholders through your the experience that you provide?
Yeah, that it's such an insightful question because at the core of our long-term growth and our long-term viability is the management of many of those stakeholders. And the most obvious are the parents and the athletes.
Mhm.
But if that's all we were serving well, I think
Mhm.
we would be in we wouldn't be able to grow the way we have been. And
Mhm.
and one of the most important is that facility management part piece.
Mm.
That is, and so our scheduling and events team, that set team that I called it to get the facilities, is they are in constant negotiation. Not like there's a negotiation phase for
Mhm.
sure when we're nailing down prices and dates and things like that, sort of the logistics of it. But after that, it's an ongoing relationship piece. Like, because now that we have a relationship with ABC University, we, unless it goes poorly, we want to be back there next year, and maybe we want to run two camps there instead of one camp. And so we really impress upon all of our employees, whether they're frontward facing like myself, who actually are in the camp, or behind the scenes, is that we want to create a world-class impression. We want our communication to be concise, polite, error free. Like, like, it's not, they're not getting a sloppy email from us that where they kind of go, what, we want to be, on top of the details. If we do make a mistake, and we do, we want to own that mistake and then wow somebody. Like, our when we make mistakes as an organization, our attitude is we want, because we believe that if all we do is just say, yeah, we made a mistake, you probably still aren't going to be very satisfied. Like, you're going to
Mhm.
go, oh, it's nice they admitted they made a mistake, but we're going, like, not only do we want to make you right, we want to make you more than right. We want
Mhm.
to, and so, for example, one of the things we offer, and it's incredible how few people ever take us up on this, but we offer, I think now it's 110% money back guarantee. Like, if you send your kid to camp and they don't have a great experience, we'll refund your money. Like, it's literally risk free to send your kid to that camp. And we want to create that same kind of wow experience on the campuses that we're at, or with the people that we're negotiating with. One of the highest compliments as directors that we can get is when our campus hosts say, you're the best group we have ever had on campus. Like, no one, like, we've had band groups here, we've had football teams, we've had Boy Scout group, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
they go, like, no one has been as polite as you have been.
Oh.
There's never a piece of garbage left in the cafeteria. The dorm rooms, like, yes, they have to be cleaned, but
Mhm.
there's no garbage left around in the dorm rooms. And so we really aspire to create wow moments for everyone who interacts with us.
That's creating wow moments. I think that can be really powerful language to use, especially when you're talking about building that culture that we talked about a little bit earlier. So that's really great. I want to talk a little bit and kind of pick your brain a little bit about your experience in the leadership side of youth
Okay.
sport, and you've had a lot of experience being the leader and
Yes.
leading teams and building that culture. Um, so obviously, there's a huge range of youth sport um, offerings, right? And in our textbook, we talk a lot about this. Of there's different types of youth sport. Can you talk a little bit about how your leadership has changed from the different context of sport that you're in? So you were a coach at one time. Now you are more of a director of other coaches. Can you talk about the different leadership strategies that you've employed and how it changes with who you're leading?
Yeah. I have been on I still am on this journey, but I've been on a significant journey on this one. Well, so I appreciate you asking. I think that earlier in my career, I was very focused on what I would call elite development. And as I related to you, I had the opportunity, the good luck, the good fortune of working with a number of athletes who went to play D1 basketball and professionally and things like that. And I think I was probably, to a fault, too focused on developing those elite kids and elite athletes. And and not, I wouldn't say I would hope I was never detrimental to the other athletes I was working with, but I was very focused on and very proud of the success of this person, that person. And now as I've moved more into leadership positions where I'm working with other adults, and I realize that in many cases, those elite kids have so many people pulling for them
Mm.
and so many opportunities that they almost can't miss. Like someone's always going to be looking out for them and looking to give them an opportunity. And it's incredible how I've started to realize that sometimes that ninth kid on your team or that 12th kid on your team is the person who goes on to become a great coach themselves, who becomes like a leader of a youth organization, who becomes a great official, who goes on and becomes a professor of sports management. Like, you just don't know
Mhm.
who these people are going to become. And
Mhm.
so I've become very committed to the idea that we need to cast the net as wide as
Mhm.
possible at the youth sport age. Like, and when I talk to coaches, and through my experience with PGC coaching, I have had a chance to do some pretty cool things with coaches across North America. I say, if you are coaching youth basketball,
Mhm.
because that's where I'm focused is basketball. I think you have two main jobs. Number one is to make it fun enough that they want to come back to play it the next year. And secondly, is to equip them with the ability, the skills to make their high school team, like
Yes.
to make that freshman team or make that G. And after that, it's going to be a combination of genetics and work ethic and
Yeah.
good luck or bad luck that might determine how far they go. But if they have fallen in love with the game because of your leadership and you're equipping them with the skill set to make a high school team, you've done your job in spades as a youth coach.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk about that. Every study that has ever been done on why kids play sports, number one is always to have fun. Always.
Yes.
And
Yep.
number two and three are something around being with my friends or making friends or being a part of team,
Yep.
something like that. And it's such a good reminder of for those of us that are on that are in youth sport as the business to remember that that's why they're doing it and to make sure
Yep.
that even with all these logistics happening behind the scenes, that at the core of it, the students just want to have fun. They want to be a good friend and meet good friends, and they just want to get a little bit better, right? And so
Yes. And
it's
and to realize, sorry, finish up. Sorry,
that's
my
okay.
bad.
No, no, no.
Well,
You go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, and to realize that, yet they're still kids,
Yes,
that
yes.
they're 12 years old, and
Yeah,
they're not Division I athletes yet.
right.
And some of them may not even play basketball past high school. I used to fall into that trap all the time, just assuming that every kid I coach wanted to play college
Yeah,
basketball. Like, I just assumed that that was a given. Like, why would you put up with me as a coach if you're not gonna, you know, want to play? And then then I was like, had multiple epiphanies of, no, they want to, they want a Letterman jacket, or they want this, or
yeah,
they want that. And and they don't they're going to play intramural basketball in university,
yeah.
and that's great.
That
And
is great, right? They're still being active. I think it's good for us to remember too, like, uh, one of the number one indicators of adults having an active lifestyle is if they did physical activity as a child. And when they stop as a child, they're not going to continue as an adult. And um, so we have to remember that, that we are creating the next generation of adults, whether they're going to be active or not, and how can we get them going? And number one is always to have fun, right? And
have
to
fun.
make
Yep.
sure we're having fun. So that's awesome. I love that you gave that insight. Um, so for those that are working in the youth sport, what are some of the most talking to our students that haven't been in the industry and they're looking at being a leader,
Mhm.
hopefully in the future in the sport industry? What are some of the qualities that you believe are most important for those that work in the sport industry?
Yeah, that's a key question, I think, because I think everyone who goes into the youth sports world needs to, like, go in with their eyes wide open, right? And Um, and as a side note, this isn't my main point, but I would say that at many levels of youth sport, you're not going to get rich. Like it's not going to be, you can make more money going and doing other things. So if money's the only thing that matters, you may want to choose another field. But I think the number one thing is a passion for working with young people.
Mm,
And that sounds so basic, but I think at the core of it, you're either someone who, when you're walking into a gym full of 40 or 50 seventh graders, you're either excited about this, like going, man, this is going to be, I know it's going to be crazy, but it's going to be fun.
yeah.
Or you're going, oh man, like I feel nervous. I feel overwhelmed. I'm going to hate this. Like okay, I got to get through 90 minutes of this or however long. And you're at core, you're one of those two things. I know maybe a mixture of both, but I think if you're going to like thrive in youth sports, you've got to understand, like you've got to love working with young people.
Yeah.
And a sort of a subsection of that hope is, I think you really have to be prepared to meet kids where they're at.
Mm,
One of the things we really try to frame at PGC is like we never want to ever fall into the trap of labeling someone as a good kid
mm,
or a bad kid. Like, because A, it's a value judgment,
mm.
but B, when we see those kids that are challenging to work with, it just means they're not ready yet. Like that like, here, yes, we're trying to teach you really good basketball, really good leadership, all these other things, but you're just not at a stage, probably because of forces way beyond their direct control. They're not ready to buy into what we're selling yet.
Mhm.
But I'll say to my director, sometimes you're planting seeds that feel like they're landing on the rockiest of soil,
Yes.
but you never know which one of those, like somewhere down the road, is going to like I had a boy at a session in Ohio that I was this close to sending home. Like I had never dealt with a boy that was this unruly and disruptive. And I finally was able to sit down with him after a very, very rocky first evening. And I just, when I found out what was going on in that boy's life, I was just able to say to him, hey, like, I know you've got all this other crap in your life, but how about this? How about just for the next 4 days, you try on a different costume,
Mm,
like you just and see how it feels.
mhm.
And without going into a lot of details, on the last day of the camp, he stepped in and did the most amazing thing you have
Oh,
ever seen. Like he literally changed his entire outlook on what he could be in life. He didn't have to be the troublemaker,
yeah.
and and so those quote hard to serve kids sometimes end up being our greatest blessings, right? Like
Yeah.
um they really and so I always try to work with our team to say, hey, always put the word yet there. They're not ready
Yes.
for this yet. So
Yeah.
love of kids, including the ones that are hard to serve. And then I think if you're going to, I think really thrive in the youth sport world, I think you do have to have a certain, like if you're going to be on the frontward facing part of the businesses, you need to have a deep knowledge of the game.
Yeah.
Like I think part of what's made PGC successful, yeah, we do incredible character development and leadership things, but we teach really good basketball.
Mm,
And we work hard at staying current, like,
mhm.
and it's a balancing act between becoming flavor of the week, like, oh, did you see this crazy dribble move that somebody worked on? Like, we don't want to be that, but we also don't want to be 10 years behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And so there's always this creative tension of, I'll give you a perfect example, very specific. When Mono went to Dick's camp, you know, 20 years ago, whenever that was, there wasn't there was no ball screens. Like ball screens weren't part of the game yet.
Mm.
Now we teach ball screens because that is part of the game. And
Yeah.
so there's always this tension between getting too far ahead, but not or not
Yeah.
staying caught up.
Yeah. But what I hear you saying is professional development, essentially, right? Is
Yes,
just constantly developing, constantly staying current. And I think that's important in every aspect of the business, right? Um,
totally.
there was a time where youth sport, all they did was paper signups, right? and
Yes.
obviously things have changed. There is a different expectation now from some stakeholders, whether that be parents or kids or guardians, that they could sign up online. So it's just, we have to stay current. We have to continually
Yes.
develop and find those development opportunities for our staff. That's what I hear
Yeah.
you saying.
And part of it too is that Mono really encourages it. We're not at the point yet where it's a requirement, but it's strongly encouraged that if you're working behind the scenes part, that you come to at least one session, so to experience it yourself, so that because sometimes if you're working, let's say in our customer service side, just as an example, or human resources, you sometimes feel fairly removed from what I'm doing on the court. We're, with 120 athletes in the gym. And when I remember one of our HR ladies came to a session I was doing in Jackson, Mississippi, and it was her first time being at a session. And she was just blown away. Like she came back, I now understand.
Yes.
And she was so fired up to come back onto our next monthly call and say, oh, you should see, I was at the session and kids were doing this and that. And it was just crazy. So we really encourage our employees, behind the scenes ones, to get to a session, even if it's just for one day, so they see the impact of all their hard work. Because I always, like, guys like me get all the credit and all the glory because we're up front, but it's all these heroes behind the scenes that make it possible. My team of directors, we couldn't do anything without the team behind us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really powerful reminder. You can tell someone till they're blue in the face, but when they feel it, they start to really
That's the
understand
key.
it. I
Yeah.
think that's really important. Well, thinking about that professional development side, what are some of the trends that you see kind of in the next 5-10 years, the shaping or the changing in youth sport? What do you see coming up that we need to maybe look out for what's happening in the youth sport industry?
Yeah, I think one trend that is not going to go away, and it's just going to continue to accelerate, is that monetization, that people are going to see that there is a rich market of both parents and athletes that they can exploit. And I when I say exploit, I don't mean that in a negative. There are definitely some dark forces out there, but like that they can get access to. And I think it's, you know, in a business like ours, it's very easy to think of, our competitors just being other camps, but there are so many resources online now that kids are getting feedback on their shots by sending into AI bots who give them feedback back on their. So there's so much money that's potentially out there in the youth sports, that I think we're going to continue to see people trying to access it. And I think the sort of the corollary of that for our students, Hope, is that I would encourage them to always think of a passion bigger than profit. Profit is important. Like, I think it's what allows PGC to be viable and stay long term. But like, at the core of our business, we just want to be a light that shapes the basketball world. That's our motto is. And from that perspective, like, Mono and his team, they scholarshiped over $500,000 of athletes to attend our sessions, people who couldn't attend, who couldn't afford. We support a lot of social justice initiatives in the United States, and we do international development. Like, I've just been talking with a coach in the last couple of weeks, a coach from Ghana, who is trying to get a few of his athletes over. We also have built a gym in Kenya through the Mully Children's Foundation. So Mono always says, if we can do well, we can do good. And I think I in no way would ever want any of our students to feel like I'm suggesting that profits aren't important, but it's profits for what purpose? Like, what are you going to do with your profits? And then the second trend that again, if I could hop on my soapbox for a moment, that I would really encourage our students to think about is, I really would encourage them to not think of youth sports as 12 months of the same sport. And I think there is so much. Basketball is as guilty as the next one. Like, like who think that your kid has to play sport, has to play basketball for 12 months of the year. And I actively am working against that model. And I think it's so important for there to be breaks and changes. Like as a Canadian, our best basketball player we've ever produced, until recently, is Steve Nash. And Steve Nash didn't pick up a basketball until he was ninth grade, and he was a soccer player until that point. And our best hockey player we ever produced, Wayne Gretzky, was, he played baseball and lacrosse in the summers. Like, so if it's good enough for these best athletes, it should be good enough for all of our kids. And I'm sure you can, list off all the physiological benefits of playing different sports. But I'm always encouraging. I'm coaching a seventh grade girls team right now, and a very talented seventh grade AAU team right now up here in Ontario. And I have about 2 or 3 girls that I have unfortunately not been able to convince. They're gonna play basketball throughout the whole summer, but all the rest of them I have actually convinced them. I've said, please don't play basketball throughout the whole summer. Like, we've been going since September. We're gonna end up this weekend at the end of April, but please take some time off, go play some other sport.
Yes, yes, I'm a big proponent of that as well. But the flip side of that, how do you run a business, a basketball business, a one sport business, while also pushing them to do other sports? What's the balance of that? How do you balance the purpose of them playing multiple sports and the profit of like staying in business? How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's a relatively easy one for PGC to answer because, as I was saying earlier, our business is so seasonal.
Yeah.
Is we're saying we really want you to, come to one of our camps. But here's where I think the balancing act comes is you can spend as a consumer, as a parent, you can spend, $1,100 or $1,200 to send your kid to a PGC session where I think they're going to get, in that week, they're going to get an incredible life experience, basketball experience, and come back better and more energized. Or you can spend that kind of same money and more to put them into an AAU program that's traveling all over the United States and actually not getting much better. They get to play lots of games. But so I've had athletes leave my sessions who are going, they have a baseball game they need to get to, or something. And I'm like, yes, please do that. Right. Like, we think that our model of a week-long camp does not preclude them from playing other sports in the summer.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. Go off and do
Good.
something else. Go off,
Right.
go off and play another sport. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's get into these rapid fire questions then. Is that good?
Sounds good.
All right, let's do it. All right. What's your most memorable moment of your career?
When you've had a career as long as mine, there are a few. I'm I'm gonna I'm gonna answer one way, and then I hopefully my next answer will balance it out. I would say the most memorable moment of my coaching career was winning. I'll use the Ontario acronym, the Jewel Championship, with a team, and this was. Think of it'd be the Canadian equivalent of the EYBL circuit. Like, it was the best teams in Canada at the U18 age group, and we won it. And I was just incredibly, it was a group of girls I had started with in seventh grade, and we had gone all the way through to 12th grade. And the year before, we had lost in the Jewel finals, and then the next year we came back and won it. And 6 of these girls went on to D1 scholarships. 5 of them went on to play Canadian university basketball, and 1 of them went on to play Canadian university soccer. So of my 12 athletes,
Wow.
they were incredibly talented,
Yeah.
and just a great group of young ladies. So I would say, from a coaching perspective, that was my proudest moment.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. Is that your greatest success, or is there another greatest success that you would say?
No, but this is where I really appreciate you following that up, because it's not even close to my greatest success. My greatest pride is, without question, I remember when I first started coaching, I thought, oh man, I'm going to remember, like, I remember like the first championship, I'm going to remember every detail of this, like, blah, blah, blah. And over the years, those details have become quite murky, to be very honest. And what I am most proud of by far is how many of my athletes invite me to their weddings, to their child's baptisms, I get a call. Like I had one boy a bunch of years ago who I got a phone call at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, and he just had found out that his parents were splitting up, and he just wanted to, could he come over and talk to me? And I was like, you realize that coaches have a special role in kids' lives. And Mono says it so well. He posted something to social media. I think it was back in September, and he said something to the effect of that tonight there are thousands or millions of parents praying that the coach that their son or daughter meets tomorrow will be the person that changes their lives. And and that's the coach I aspire to be. Like that's, I feel like that is what every coach should aspire to be, is to be that single coach that when somebody thinks back to their basketball career, they go, oh man, that's the coach that lit me up. And so the fact that I've continued to get to be part of my athletes' lives going forward, because basketball, honestly, it's just the tool that God gave me to impact lives. Like I have so much respect for the art teacher, the drama teacher, the music teacher who does what I do, but just in a different form, and helps people find their passions, and then helps people transfer the lessons of basketball to what is really most important, which is life. Like if you can't take the discipline and the teamwork and the ability to take feedback that comes with being a basketball player, if you can transfer that into the rest of your life, you're a champion.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. All right. Well, you didn't win every game, so you had some failures along the way. So, what are
Yes.
some of the lessons, maybe the biggest lesson that you've learned throughout your career?
Yeah, and there have been definitely some really, like there have been some challenging times when I think if ever any coach, like there's times when you question yourself, like, not maybe not even just in the moment, like did I make the right call or something, but sometimes you wonder, like, am I doing this the right way, like in the big picture? And I think those moments of self-doubt are also great opportunities. Like um you have to dig down into yourself and find out, one of the things we talk about in PGC coaching is making sure that your passion runs deeper than your problems, like, that your purpose is bigger than your problems, because being a coach is challenging. Like there are times when parents can be difficult, and so I think that finding that passion bigger than your problems is really important. But I think one of the things I've really learned, and I want to give Mono credit for this, is to it was changing the way I viewed difficult conversations. And when I was in that leadership role, leading a team of 53 directors, they're amazing people and incredibly successful people. But there were times when there were dropped balls. And my nature is, I definitely am an accountability person, but I didn't enjoy in any way having difficult conversations with people. And consequently, I sometimes let it go too long, and then a small problem became a bigger problem, or in some cases I just didn't deal with it as timely as I needed to. And Mono helped me to reframe those difficult, challenging conversations as opportunities. He said, Craig, this is an opportunity for you to learn more about yourself. Done well, it's an opportunity for you to learn more about the person who you're having to have this conversation with. And typical of Mono, he hopped on a couple of calls with me to model that for me. And it really changed my frame of mind on that. And I'm not to the point where I relish difficult conversations, but I actually now I talk positively to myself, saying, "Hey, this is going to be a great opportunity for you," and that's really helped me.
What a gift he gave you to sit in with you, to see it. Sometimes
Yes.
you just need a leader to show you, to not just talk about it, but to show you like what is right about it, not just what's
Yes.
wrong about it.
Yeah, and in many cases, I have found out that the other person knows that there was a dropped ball. Like you're not surprising them with, you're not dropping a bombshell on them. Like they know that there's some accountability there, and they actually, especially the kind of people that PGC works with, they want to clean the slate. They want to take ownership. And in cases like I've had to, as part of those conversations, admit where I dropped the ball, like saying, hey, like I needed to check in with you more on that, whether you're doing that, or maybe our training wasn't completely up to snuff. So there is that sense of shared ownership becomes so much easier to bear when you're having transparent conversations that, again, similar to what we talked with our athletes, is assuming best intents of people, like assuming that they're doing the very best with what they have right now.
Mm-hmm. So good. That's a good word. Okay, next question. If you could give a future youth sport professional one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think I'm going to circle back to one of the concepts I mentioned earlier, is that you do not have to have been an elite basketball player to work within PGC. And I think there are times when it actually may be an advantage to not be so immersed in the culture of a sport. Like there are certain jobs, yes, in PGC, we need you to have a basketball background. But in many cases, you know, I would say, hey, if you've got students sitting in your classes who go, man, I didn't get a D1 scholarship, you can still have a tremendous career in sports.
Good. That's a good word. All right, what's one misconception about the industry that you want to correct?
I think it circles back to what I was talking about earlier about like trying to avoid falling into that 12-month one sport a year kind of trap. I think that is, there are some really, really smart, well-intended people who think that is the way to go. And I just think that from my experience as a coach, like I can think of multiple athletes who I coached who would have came into high school, like I think once you're in college, the die is cast, right? Like it's, but who came into high school and would have described themselves as being basketball players first and foremost, and then had the opportunity or the encouragement for me to play other sports, who then, I still remember one girl named Michelle who, she discovered rugby at our high school, and kind of like, coming into her senior year, like she said to me, Coach, I think I want to be more of a rugby player than a basketball player. And I said, well, Michelle, you're still going to play basketball this season, right? And she goes, oh yeah, I'm going to play basketball. I said, great. And she went on to be an all-Canadian in rugby at one of our universities here. And it was like, if she hadn't played rugby, she would have missed her truest calling.
Yeah, that's so cool. Okay.
Hope, can I maybe just throw one other one? I just, as I was thinking,
please.
Is that like in terms of misconceptions or or truths that I would want students to know, it would be along the line that I think sometimes there's this false dichotomy that in youth sports you have to choose between quantity or quality. That you're either going to have a ton of kids at your camps and just make a whole bunch of money and but it's going to just be chaos, or you choose quality and elite and a small number. And I really think PGC is a shining example of that. You can choose both. Like it's not one or the other. You can build a big organization like PGC and still deliver quality at the highest standards. It's not easy. It's really challenging, but it's possible.
Oh, that's a really, really good insight, because that is a really common misconception of either we're going to make a lot of money by having lots of kids, or we're going to make a lot of money or a little bit of money doing a few kids, and we're going to do it well. So I love that you brought that up, because that is very common. How has your personal experience in youth sport informed the work that you do?
I feel so blessed that I got myself out of the mergers and acquisition world that I mentioned at the beginning of the interview. Working with young people has been the biggest blessing in my life in terms of the incredible relationships I've built, but the opportunities I've had. Like basketball has now taken me around the world in different capacities, and the people I've got to meet at the university levels, and especially since working full time with PGC since 2020. Like it's been, I just can't tell you the how blessed I feel.
Yeah, that's so cool. All right, last question. Who is your favorite coach of all time and why?
Oh, that's a super easy one for me. Um, I thought I would be able to do this without, uh, uh, but George Huntsberger died a year and a half ago, and he was my high school basketball coach, and absolutely changed the entire trajectory. Like I know with 100% certainty that I would not be talking to you today, Hope, if George hadn't picked me. Like I was a hockey player, typical Canadian kid, and I wasn't even thinking of trying out for the basketball team. And he said, "Oh, I'd like you to try out for the basketball team and for the JV basketball team." And I was like, I didn't even like basketball, like, but I had this sense that this was a special man, like that he was the kind of guy I wanted in my life. And I made the team. I was the I was the 12th of 12 guys because I didn't know anything about basketball. But once I got bit by the basketball bug, it just I literally, that was my last year playing hockey. Like I quit hockey. I just wanted to be basketball, basketball, basketball. And George, he just continued to feed into my life, like in the way that I've hoped that I've been able to do. Like he was the master of ceremonies at our wedding.
Yeah.
We got, I would get together at least once every 6 months with him. And he died of a heart attack, as I said, a year and a half ago. And it just, I was so thankful. My wife and I had been out for a breakfast with him about 2 weeks before he died, and as fate would have it, I did tell him, like I told him, George, I want you to know how much you've changed my life. And then he was taking down the Christmas tree and had a heart attack. So yeah, George Huntsberger was a huge influence in my life.
Oh, that's so wonderful. What I love about that question is everybody that I've ever asked has always said a youth sport coach.
Yes.
It's,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's never the NBA coach that they aspire to be. It's never an NFL coach that has won a lot of championships. It's always the youth sport coach that
Yeah.
made a difference in their life. So
That
thank you for
I
that.
think, well, thank you for sharing that. It doesn't surprise me, but given the scope of people that you've interviewed, Hope, I think that's really given the work that I'm in and the passion I have, that's just that fires me up. That I find that super affirming.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're doing good work. Thanks for all that you do for youth sports, especially in basketball. And thank you so much for taking the time today. I know the students are going to love all the answers that you gave. It's going to be really insightful for them. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Hope, and I really celebrate the work that you and your co-author are doing in creating, a book about a really, really important topic, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a copy of it.
Yeah, I'll send you one.
Thank you.